I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. Welcome to Friday. You know, there's some things we expect to stay the same in life, like our form of government. While the people that make up Portland City Council changes through the years, the form of government, well, that stays the same, right? One mayor, 4 commissioners to make the city council. However, the only thing that truly is inevitable is change, and that is our big story tonight. About 6 weeks from now, on July 1st, the city of Portland will launch an experiment. That's when city government will begin practicing for its eventual new form of government, the first change of our government format in more than 100 years. Now, I think this is a fascinating story because of all the people involved and the gigantic change it's going to bring. If you've not followed every twist and turn of the story leading up till now, do not despair. Here's a quick catch-up.
Back in November of 2022, Portland voters agreed to change the city's form of government, a form that had lasted since 1913. This is a graphic we created 2 years ago to explain the old system. Joanne Hardesty there on the left is now replaced by Renee Gonzalez, but I think it works for the larger point I'm trying to make. Under the old system, 4 city commissioners and the mayor are responsible for policy issues, but also oversee the day-to-day operations of bureaus and their hundreds of employees. It is a big job. There are millions of dollars running through the system. Over time, that system allowed the creation of huge silos where groups did not cooperate with each other because they didn't have to. They could ignore what the mayor wanted to do, for example. They only needed to make the commissioner in charge of them happy. The result is a city bureaucracy that is disjointed, cumbersome, and at times less than effective. Under the new system passed by voters, city commissioners will only focus on policy issues. This is the city's new organizational chart. See the city council way over there on the left? That's to keep their hands out of the bureaus and the offices there on the right. Instead, a professional city administrator will take over, assisted by 6 deputy city administrators. And 33 bureaus and offices will now be consolidated into just 6 areas.
Now you're up to speed. City commissioner ranks will be expanded to 12. That'll be 3 people each representing 4 different quadrants of the city. Those commissioners will be elected in 6 months, by the way, to take office in January of 2025. But that other part, consolidating all the silos into just 6 places, well, that's going to start in 6 weeks on July 1st. While the elected city commissioners will still technically be in charge, those deputy city managers are going to move in and start running things overseen by the city administrator. So that's going to be a really big change. And the guy running that change is Portland's chief administrative officer. His name is Mike Jordan. He'll become the city's first administrator under the new system, but only on an interim basis. He is, if you will, the conductor who must teach an orchestra that's been playing the same way for decades how to do many things differently, which is why I wanted to talk with him about what lies ahead.
Well, July 1st will be the start of our new fiscal year. And we have been, since last November when Council adopted the new framework for the government, we've been budgeting into that new framework, and that budget will start July 1. So on July 1, we'll, for lack of a better term, begin practicing how the city will operate in the future under a new mayor and a new city council in January of 25. So we've got kind of a 6-month runway to work out the kinks, and we'll have deputy city administrators in place. I'll be in place as the interim city administrator. We start July 1, we start practicing in the new structure. We've got a lot of questions to answer that are kind of the next level of detail questions. The thing that the council adopted back in November is really a large framework for the whole city, but a bunch of detailed questions buried in that framework that need to be answered in the next cycle of change. So.
By the way, we're meeting in a city conference room there. That's why you see all that interesting stuff on the walls. But even before the experiment starts, there's already battles that are underway. As Willamette Week reported, existing commissioners Mapps and Rubio are at odds with each other. They both have bureaus under the existing system that holds people involved in permitting. In the new system, all the permitting people are going to be gathered in one place under one leader, not scattered across their individual bureaus. Well, Willamette Week reports that Mapps said some of his permitting people are saying, hey, boss, I'm supposed to move over to this new shop, but it's not clear who my boss is going to be and how we're going to make decisions. Mapps wanted Rubio to slow the consolidation process, but she said, no. Jordan says it's an example of the change that needs to happen in city government.
Well, it is a little awkward, but it's also an example of the kinds of examination of how we do business that I think will be easier to do under the new structure, where you'll have one person that's kind of accountable to the whole thing and one place where the buck stops. When we did permitting, this work we've done at restructuring permitting that goes into effect also July 1, it involves 7 different bureaus reporting to all 5 different commissioners. And so trying to manage that kind of change with very kind of fragmented leadership at the very top, it presents its own set of complications, let's put it that way. In the future, when we do things like that, we'll just have one city administrator that will be calling the shot, and there may be multiple deputies involved, but they're all accountable to that one city administrator, who's ultimately accountable to the mayor also. So.
And why are there 7 different bureaus involved in permitting?
Well, when you apply for a development permit, the Fire Bureau has to deal with fire and life safety. The Water Bureau has to deal with your water hookup. Environmental Services deals both with your storm drainage work and an environmental view of the permit. The BDS, formerly Development Services, now Portland Permitting and Development, but BDS has to do with the state building code and inspections of the property. And then the Parks Bureau has the urban forester. So if there are trees on your lot, or you're going to have to plant street trees in the front of the development, whatever you're doing, then the urban forester has a permitting role. So a lot of bureaus involved in one development permit. And I think it was recognized, it's been recognized for decades. But this commission, I think, and it's laudable that this commission, with 4 of them running for office and all of the things that comes, they've been very focused on changing this permitting process and getting all the people involved in a building permit working in one bureau with a single director accountable to all of those issues. There are still complications, don't get me wrong. There are chief engineers in the infrastructure bureaus that set the standards for infrastructure that a developer might build that the city takes over. So in front of a big development, maybe the water system needs to be expanded or the sewer system needs to be changed. But ultimately, that all goes back to the city to maintain. And so those chief engineers, they set the standard for the specifications of that improvement, but yet that all has to go through the development permitting process. And so it can get a little complicated, and one of the reasons to try and consolidate it and streamline it was because of those complications. And
the hope that it'll be faster and simpler.
Exactly. It's customer service. It's about getting things through the permitting process faster. It's about being more responsive. We have a lot of people, not these days, but we have had historically a lot of people who do development in the city that do it all the time. And they've got attorneys and they've got planners and they've got engineers that do this stuff for them, and they understand the process. I think the people we struggle with the most are mom and pop who want to expand their business, and they'll do it once in their life, and they don't know anything about this process. And we have to find a way to get them through what can be a very convoluted set of decisions that have to be made. And we're working on not only restructuring organizationally, but what does that kind of concierge service look like for the people who are going to do it one time? And yet that's the bulk of our permits, right? We're a small business community mostly. And so getting those folks through the process in a way that is efficient and effective and gets them what they need to really build our community is the important part.
Almost like a case manager that would help them from walk in the door till you walk out.
Great metaphor, yeah.
Okay. Now, I know that was really detailed, but I wanted you to hear what's happening with permitting because it's such a huge pain in the rear for those small business owners who are trying to grow and expand. And while the big folks may have professionals on staff to help them, it doesn't mean they like the cumbersome system that we have now either. Okay, so that should get better. Let's hope. Another thing that will start on July 1st, when all these silos get knocked down and all these people get gathered together, Jordan and others will start figuring out what's really going on in our city government and whether people could be doing things more efficiently.
We have about 85 folks in all of city government that do communications. And the way we have evolved because of the structure of government is all of the big bureaus have basically created a comm shop inside of themselves because we don't share resources very well in the current structure and historically. So one of the things we will do with the comms officer is we're going to, have a conversation about, okay, this person not only maybe sets the standard for practice. How does it look when we do press releases? How is it going to be done when we do a meeting out in the public? Those kinds of things. But also, perhaps all those 80 or so people should in some way, shape, or form report to the officer. Now, you can't watch 80 people all day long, and so that means the management structure of communications has got to be restructured a little bit. And maybe managers sit in each of the service areas that report to the comms officer, and they manage the comms in the service areas. But we also have to look at the distribution of human resource. We have probably 20, maybe more, comms folks in public works in the 3 big infrastructure bureaus, transportation, water, and sewer, and none in budget and finance. That's just an example of maybe we need to think about the distribution of those resources also. Also consolidating them under one authority, one person, allows us to move resource more fluidly. Say we have a communications crisis thing to manage in one of the bureaus and they don't have the capacity. We can move people and say, okay, next 3 months, you're working over here and you need to manage this issue. And so we struggle with that. The fluidity of how to apply human resource is a struggle for us now, and this, I think, will help us.
Interesting. And I can hear somebody in the audience saying, and maybe you don't need 85 people doing that.
So that's a good response. As we go through these processes to figure out each of these disciplines, we will begin to understand better how many people we have doing it, and what kind of capability and capacity do they have. And those kinds of questions should be on the tip of our tongue. And I'm not here to propose layoffs. However, I would bet pretty good money right now that of those 80 or 85 positions, 6 or 7 of them are vacant. So as you examine, you might say, we don't need to fill those vacancies. And when someone retires or leaves for another job, do we really need to fill that vacancy? And so over a number of years, you get to right size the organization. You don't know what you're going to find when you start to examine what happens with people, and you don't know how much redundancy or duplication there is in the organization. I will guarantee you there's some. How much? I don't really know right now, but we'll find out this year.
It's maybe, I don't know if it's a good analogy, but as you were saying that, I was thinking of people that go in and renovate an old house.
Yeah.
You start pulling the walls apart and you say, uh-oh.
No, exactly.
Or maybe you say, oh, hey, this is great.
Oh, yeah. It is that kind. It's a good metaphor because there's a whole bunch of things at an enterprise scale I don't know about the organization. I know quite a bit about the Office of Management and Finance because that's what I've been working with for my time here, and I know quite a bit about environmental services because I used to work there. But PBOT and fire and police and parks, I don't know that much about them. And so we're going to find out a lot with each other. We're going to do this together. It won't just be the 6 city administrators. We will work with the directors of bureaus, and then we'll also have to work with those subject matter experts depending on what the discipline is, whether it's comms or equity or whatever. And we'll work with those people in bureaus and we'll get a good sense of, okay, what do you do? How much time does it take? What's the volume of work? All those kinds of things, and then start to think about, okay, let's start to think about how we right size and how we apply human resource in the best way possible.
So fascinating, huh? Big changes are coming to the city of Portland, and they all start in 6 weeks. Thanks, by the way, to Mike Jordan for taking the time to sit down and explain some of the things going on behind the scenes. It really is a historic change, both for the 7,000 city employees and for the 635,000 residents that they serve in the city. And we're going to be following this one closely. In the meantime, what do you think about what you heard here? Send me an email. Let me know, will you? The address is thestory@kgw.com, or if you'd prefer, you can call and leave a voicemail. The number is 503-226-5090. I look forward to hearing from you. Still ahead on the story, election concerns raised just days ahead of the Oregon primary. An Oregon lawmaker alleges the U.S. Postal Service is involved. Tonight, we're working to verify those claims. What we found out when the story returns. The Oregon primary is just 4 days out. Get your ballots in. This week, the House Republican leader is raising claims that completed ballots were being held by the U.S. Postal Service instead of being returned quickly to county elections officials. We had trouble believing that, so our John Adams reached out to that lawmaker, the Postal Service, and numerous county clerks to see if it really is true.
This week, the Republican leader in the Oregon House put out a news release claiming there were instances of completed ballots being held at post office locations in the state. Representative Jeff Helfrich talked to KGW about the claims.
What it is, it's a threat to protect the integrity of our system, and people want to know it's safe and secure. And we've heard that time and time again from the Secretary of State's office that it's secure, your vote counts, you're going to get them. Well, if they haven't been counted yet or haven't been received yet, that causes concern for people.
So we went to work to verify if those claims are true. Was the Postal Service holding ballots? The Oregon Secretary of State's office confirmed that a call was held with USPS and county clerks around the state on Thursday morning, and they were made aware of an instance of ballots being held at a post office, and that USPS would have the situation fixed by Friday. After contacting multiple county clerks and USPS, we discovered the delay took place at a post office in Roseburg in Douglas County. While there was a delay where some ballots were held at that post office, it was only a few hours. The post office held the ballots a few hours longer than normal to determine how much the county would be billed for postage. In Oregon, the counties pay USPS for the delivery of ballots, not voters. Here is former Oregon representative and current executive director of the National Vote at Home Institute, Barbara Smith Warner, explaining the issue.
This was basically some slight confusion in some counties about who was going to do the counting and tallying of how many ballots were going through that the counties would then get charged for the postage costs.
USPS also released this statement to KGW. The U.S. Postal Service is committed to the secure, timely delivery of the nation's election mail. Regarding election mail in Douglas County, a limited number of ballots weren't immediately available to election officials. The ballots were made available later that day with no further delay. We are reviewing procedures with our employees and look forward to next week's successful election. John Adams, KGW News.
All right, thank you, John. You know what? Saturday marks 44 years since the eruption of Mount St. Helens.
And the station called and said, it's changed big time.
We go into the KGW vault and bring you a unique look at how we covered what happened all those years ago. Stay with us. Tomorrow marks 44 years since the eruption of Mount St. Helens. It covered the Northwest in clouds of ash. KGW crews were covering the eruption in the air and on the ground that day, seeing and feeling the effects up close. Let's head into the KGW vault and hear from former KGW reporter Boyd Levitt.
This is a special report of the King Broadcasting Network live from KGW News 8 in Portland, Oregon.
First, we take you live to Amboy, Washington, where reporter Boyd Levitt is standing by in the shadow of Mount St. Helens. Boyd?
For Robin and Ralph, the volcano's blasts have come with a vengeance today. The spectacle of the massive plume is one that few will forget. With a little bit of wind from the West Lake today, we can get a little better view of it this afternoon than we had earlier in the day to see that the conically shaped top of the mountain is now gone. That in fact there's a rounded appearance to the top of the volcano. That the steam and the ash are coming from a wide area on top. Obviously there is a very large crater there.
Well, certainly a historic day, but you know, those memories sear themselves into your mind. And so it was the first day, somewhere around mid-March, well, March 20, if I remember right, when there was an earthquake, and it was a 5.0 sort of thing. And my assignment was simply on day one to go up and do something with the story about an earthquake.
A few moments ago, we felt one of those strong earthquakes. We were sitting in our news car at about 9:05 in the morning. First a slow rocking motion, and then a few fast jolts, and then several aftershocks.
But when the bulge started on the north side of the mountain, and there was this pressure pushing up, and the whole edge of the mountain was sort of creeping up like that, then the geologists said to themselves and then to the public, this is something potentially very, very dangerous. I will admit that at one point I stood on the top of the mountain as the bulge was bulging, and you could look at it horizontally, and it was growing at the rate of 5 feet a day, and that was worrisome to everybody.
We've got an eruption down here. Now we got a big slide coming off. The slide is coming off of the west slope.
And the station called and said, it's changed big time. And it took me about 30 seconds to get my hiking boots on and all my gear and that iconic KGW blue jacket out the door, into town, up through the Terwilliger curves, and there it was.
We weren't quite prepared for what we saw today and what we smelled today. Inside the aircraft here, a sickening stench of hydrogen sulfide.
57 families lost loved ones in this, and several of my friends as well. So it was a story of drama that didn't end on May 18th, it was just beginning.
As the ash is continuing to come out of the mountain at this hour at sunset here on the southwest side of Mount St. Helens. And from our position on the top of Mount Amboy, I'm Boyd Levitt reporting.
What an amazing event. Hey, that's the end of our show. Thanks so much for watching. And remember the story, our collective story? Well, that never ends. I'm going to be off Monday, but you'll be in good hands with the team here. And then I'll be back on Tuesday, which is Election Day. Have a great weekend.